Should you buy Stellaris First Contact, the latest DLC released for a game that you probably already know and possibly love, Stellaris? Well, I'm going to cut straight to the point, which you've already seen, I suspect, in the thumbnail, and my answer is probably not. There is, however, a massive asterisk next to that, and I'm now going to spend the next few minutes diving into why I think you should or should not buy the game, because that answer is somewhat complicated depending on your situation. I want to preface all of this by saying that I absolutely love Stellaris, and I have really enjoyed large aspects of this new DLC. But I am going to try and suspend some parts of my subjective opinions here and be as objective about this as I can. The first point that needs to be made and addressed is that this story pack is more expensive than any other story pack we've seen before. Usually story packs cost €10, $10, 10 equivalent currency. This time we are having to spend 15, which is a 50% increase, quite a bit. I imagine if you already take issue with Stellaris or Paradox's DLC policy, you might balk at that number because that isn't a tiny amount of money. But if we do make the purchase and dive in, what are we going to get for our money? Well, there are 3 new origins. Payback Origin, which is a challenging origin, has some interesting features about it, mainly the fact that you start with some technologies missing, you have fewer pops at the beginning, only 10 pops at the start of the game, and you are entirely hell-bent on paying back the empire that uplifted you from primitives into a spacefaring civilization and stole a bunch of your pops and did other awful things to you. This also has a cousin, a brother, and that is the Broken Shackles origin. Broken Shackles is also a challenging origin. You start on a planet with not just one species, but a multitude of different species, this representing the cargo of a crashed slaver ship. Just like Payback, your antithesis, your enemy, is the advanced empire with the Your Ladder to the Sky origin that spawns somewhere in the galaxy. This empire is always Minimar Specialized Industries. Now, on that point, I have seen some people complaining in forums, etc., about having the empire that will be the antagonist of these 2 origins always be the same. My comment there would be that yes, but I'm very confident mods will fix that in absolutely no time whatsoever if you have a problem with that. I, on the other hand, had absolutely no issues with Minimar Specialized Industries being the bad guy. I actually found it very flavorful, and I found it quite enjoyable knowing who this empire was going to be every time. It made contacting them and finding them always a little bit nerve-wracking because I know exactly what kind of attitude they are going to have towards me. Now, both of these are pitched as story-based origins. Both Payback and Broken Shackles are meant to be telling a story. Unlike Knights of the Toxic God, which released with Stellaris Toxoids last year, however, that story is not linear in any way, shape, or form. That story absolutely depends on the random evolution of the game around you. And I actually think, in this case, that's something of an issue. When playing as a Payback Empire, I have had some rather unfortunate things happen. Minimar Specialized Industries has been a vassal of another empire when I found it, making them pretty pathetic compared to me. Additionally, Minimar Specialized Industries seems to have lost some early wars, and then had lost a lot of their planets, and they were relatively pathetic in power versus me. This meant when I was trying to play through and do my own roleplay and had a specific narrative in mind, that of Minimar Specialized Industries being kind of this big bad guy that I wanted to defeat around the mid-game time, it simply wasn't possible because they'd already been taken away from me. And I have to say that didn't feel great. But given the way that this origin has been created, I don't think there's anything they could have done to safeguard MSI and make 100% sure that they do not go away. Overall, Broken Shackles and Payback did feel enjoyable and fun when they worked. When they didn't work, I did feel somewhat like my playthrough had been spoiled through events completely outside of my control. Now, because of the way this works, I'm not sure whether there is that much replayability with them. I do think the more that you replay both of these origins, the more you might get annoyed with Minimar's specialized industries and their existence, and the fact that on every campaign, you'll pretty much have to somehow either make your peace with them or defeat them. So whilst they are very open world, you are still shoehorned into some narrative elements. Fear of the Dark, which is an origin clearly inspired by the Dark Forest theory, is probably the best origin in this new DLC. I think it's going to offer you the most replayability. It does have story beats. Those story beats are reactive to what happens in the universe around you, and there is no big baddie like MSI that can be defeated or destroyed before you've even made contact, so there's nothing to fear with the story going awry. Additionally to that, a lot of the mechanical elements in this are quite interesting. You've got this separate colony in your starting system that you constantly have to interact with, and is basically the little demon on your shoulder saying, "Oh no, better not do that." Where I think Fear of the Dark suffers is that in a multiplayer situation, your lack of starting pops is going to be something of an issue. In fact, all three origins I don't believe lend themselves massively well to multiplayer play. Payback and Broken Shackles both only spawn one Minimar specialized industries, and as far as I can tell, even if you have multiple Payback empires, there's still only one MSI to kill. So these three origins are very interesting. I think your opinions of them will suffer over multiple playthroughs, and I don't think they're as narratively driven as you might expect from a story pack. Then we have the 4 civics, one for each government authority type, that being Regular, Megacorp, Hive, and Machine, that all start you with 10 fewer pops and don't give you hyperdrives, meaning you don't have the normal means of exploration. Instead, you get subspace drives, which are kind of like jump drives with very short range. These civics are really fun. They don't have any narrative elements to them other than what you include in your roleplay. But having a different FTL type at the start of the game, and actually you can choose to never research hyperdrives if you don't want to, is really interesting from a roleplay perspective. A lot of players have wanted to go back to the old system where we had 3 different types of FTL for quite a long time, according to some of the forum posts I've seen. And whilst these 4 civics don't take you there specifically, they do add in some variety. Combining something like Eager Explorers with the Quantum Catapult start can also give you the hilarious advantage of being able to pretty much snipe any early planets you can find. You will have very minimal increase to influence cost for grabbing systems very far away from your capital. In fact, I think that combination might actually be multiplayer viable and hilariously effective. If you're enjoying this video and you'd like to support this channel, you can do so by following the link down in the description below and purchasing something from the Humble Bundle store. Right now, if you really do want to go out and get it, you can even get your hands on Steam keys for the new Stellaris First Contact DLC or the older, and possibly better, Ancient Relics DLC on the Humble Bundle page. As I said, the links to that are down below in the description, and if you make any purchases on the Humble Bundle store, you'll also be supporting this channel. Next up, we have the feature that almost nobody saw coming, and that is cloaking. Cloaking allows you to hide your ships from your opponents. You have a strength, and they, if they have the right technology and build the right components on their star bases, will have a detection rating to detect your cloaked ships and reveal them. How does cloaking feel in game though? Well, there is the first bonus, and that is the fact you can survey basically every system in the galaxy, especially systems with leviathans or other evil entities in them, at no risk to your science ships. That is quite a nice little feature to be able to use. On top of that, as long as your ships have a high enough cloaking strength that beats the detection strength of whichever nation you're trying to subvert, you can fly through their systems and map out their space with your science ships as well. When it comes to actual combat, yes, you can move your cloaked ships into an enemy's territory before war starts, and then as soon as war starts, decloak and attack from deep inside the enemy territory. That can be absolutely devastating and, I assume, pretty terrifying to an opponent. But once you're actually at war, your cloaks cannot bypass FTL inhibitors. So you can't sneak past stations with a cloaked fleet if they have an FTL inhibitor, and that feels kind of annoying. You are stuck there. On the other hand, when you're dealing with cloaked fleets, if you don't have enough technology to detect them, it can be absolutely infuriating as they sneak around your systems without FTL inhibitors and bypass the defenses you're trying to set up to defeat them. Overall, cloaking feels somewhat like a win more mechanic. The empires that are ahead technologically will generally be ahead on cloaking and detection, and thus they'll be able to cloak their ships and detect any of yours that attempt to cloak. You can spec heavily into cloaking by taking the subterfuge tradition and adding enigmatic engineering. That'll give you a base additional cloaking strength of 3, and picking the right admiral like Trickster will give you a bit more cloaking strength. But that can be easily countered if your opponent builds enough detection arrays or has the technology to increase their effectiveness with dark matter detection. Combining that with something like a listening post and possibly the Yut astronomical interferometer pretty much neuters any thoughts anyone had of cloaking anywhere near your territory. Overall, cloaking feels like an interesting mechanic that can be used to some thematic effect and can be quite pleasant and helpful when you're doing exploration, but overall, I really don't think it's going to have that much of an impact. Empires that are behind technologically will still lose their wars, and empires that are ahead will probably win. It definitely felt pretty awful to be on the receiving end of an advanced AI empire which had cloaking and was using it effectively to bypass my large fleet groupings with their smaller fleets and wreak havoc inside of my space. And if you're enjoying this video, please objectively analyze and evaluate that like button. And then we get to what is arguably the gem and the jewel of this entire story pack, and that is the rework to Pre-Ftl Civilizations. If you're a fan of Pre-Ftl interactions and all of the roleplay and content there, then I'm going to have to stop right here and say you'll absolutely love this story pack. Go out and get it. There has been so many different events, so many different little tweaks and reworks added in. Part of these are in the free update, but a whole host of the new events, and I've gone through the files, there are so many new events to Pre-Ftls. I just want to say the many tentacled one stuff, I was absolutely there for. When you find the many tentacled one, or when they show up on your planet, a lot of fun. I just really found that one quite a fun little interaction. I haven't been able to work out the reference yet, but I swear that is a reference. If you know what I'm talking about and you know what the reference is, please let me know down in the comments, because I'd love to find out. Or if you're the dev who wrote it, please just send me a message. So, if you buy this story pack, you'll get access to, in addition to the free features, some of the new paid features as well. Now, those paid features include new spy operations. However, I would actually say the spy operations you get with the DLC are pretty much pointless. You get increased awareness and spread disinformation. Plant advanced knowledge, indoctrinate society, and infiltrate government have all been lifted from previous editions of the game and are still in the base game. You do not need the DLC to do the most meaningful interactions. Increase awareness and spread disinformation, on the other hand, will increase and decrease the awareness level of the civilization. When it reaches 100, they will know that they are not alone in the universe. However, this awareness will tick up and down depending on what's been going on around the Empire. Increasing awareness costs influence and a monthly energy upkeep, and it's a 4-stage process. It can take, especially because I haven't worked out how to increase this skill bonus a large amount yet, and you cannot get any assets on the planet or anything like that, it can take quite a while for this increased awareness to finish, by which point you gain somewhere in the region of 20 awareness, and that will then tick down again over time, so it can be almost impossible if you're trying to do a roleplay and observing something like subtle interference on your pre-FTL interference policy to get to a high enough level of awareness that you are allowed to reveal your presence. I suspect these two will get fixed by the custodians, and I would hope the custodians add additional espionage interactions, because this screen, to be quite honest, is the most lackluster. Aside from the somewhat non-functional increasing and decreasing of awareness, everything you can do here, you could already do before this DLC. When you do finally reveal yourselves, you then have some new interactions you can do with these Pre-Ftl civilizations. You can basically make them more like you ethically, you can increase their technology level, or you can make a small amount of money from them. And you can do all three of these at the same time. Generally speaking, however, those interactions are pretty much just an extension of the espionage interactions you have already here, and the minor amount of money you make from a commercial agreement is probably less valuable than the society research you were getting when you were observing them before. Now, in order to balance primitives a bit and make it so that deciding to invade them and steal their pops and planet isn't always a simple decision, they've done, I believe, two things. The first and most obvious is this new observation insight. There are 12 new insight technologies you can get only through primitive interactions by observing a primitive empire that does not know the wider galaxy is there. Additionally, the vast majority of primitives you will encounter tend to be Stone Age primitives, the lowest level of primitive civilization, and this generally means they only have 2 pops. Just 2 pops isn't actually that valuable. You're probably better off some of the time going for those observation insights, especially if you can roll the 3 most powerful ones. Those being Supreme Alloy for a base of plus 0.5 alloys from jobs, the special insight that gives you +1 districts on every planet for absolutely nothing, and also the Admiral Thrawn insight that lets you completely eviscerate any rival by getting plus 10% damage to all rivals. On top of that, as you can see here, if you own some of the other DLC, primitives can now spawn with some of the origins that only regular empires get to spawn with. I'm talking Shattered Ring, Mechanist, Life-Seeded, Ocean Paradise, like this one, and Subterranean. That additional flavor added is really, I'm finding it quite wild. Honestly, the primitive interactions in this, the bonuses to primitives in both the free rework and this DLC are, for me, the best part of this story pack. You can also find a post-apocalypse pre-FTL empire that has survived an atomic wasteland, but I think that one is included in the base game, not involved in DLC. Overall, if you're a fan of primitive interaction, if you want roleplay there, this DLC is probably going to be pretty good for you. Outside of primitive interactions and the new origins and civics, if you're not using any of those, just the cloaking alone is probably not worth the purchase. And if you're looking to buy a DLC at the moment, I'd like to draw your attention to one of the DLCs that has been completely reworked with this new patch, patch 3.7. And that is the Ancient Relics DLC. With Ancient Relics, you get access to archaeological dig sites and relics that you're going to find elsewhere in the universe. This is what we know already. There's also 2 extra precursor civilizations, and you'll get relic worlds, including, I believe, the relic world Origin, plus the use of these things, minor artifacts. Now, minor artifacts have been very much reworked. Not only are they more important now than ever because we can have a monthly income of minor artifacts, meaning we can do things like reverse engineer arcane technology forever, but on top of that we have a brand new technology type, and that is archaeotechnology. This has all been reworked and is now included in the Ancient Relics DLC. Archaeotech includes a wide variety of technologies all in the society tree, from new weapons and defenses all the way over to unique new buildings, which in certain cases like the Ancient Refinery are absolutely amazing and really, really useful. If you're not playing with primitives a lot, or you're not really interested in that, and you're not going to play with the origins a lot, then the biggest impact I think you'll have on your gameplay as of patch 3.7 will not be to buy First Contact, but instead to get the Ancient Relics DLC. First Contact is 50% more expensive than Ancient Relics, and that's before we even take into account things like the possibility of a sale. So what is my final recommendation when it comes to patch 3.7 and the First Contact DLC? If this is your first DLC, you're making a mistake. Don't buy First Contact as your very first one. You'll probably want to buy something like Utopia, or something that has a wider game impact on the entirety of the game and not just pre-FTL interactions. Yes, if you already have most of the DLC, and you would like to get your hands on these new primitive story chains, some of which are really, really fun and interesting, especially from a roleplay perspective, then you probably should go out and buy First Contact. I would personally fall inside this category. I have really enjoyed my time playing First Contact, specifically the primitive interactions, which are stronger now than they've ever been before in the game, and because you can increase the number of primitives in your galaxy, this adds so much more depth to the Stellaris galaxy. Instead of just having all of these advanced empires in the universe, now there are quite a few primitive empires that actually matter to the state of galactic affairs. On the other hand, if primitives aren't really your cup of tea, and you only have a few DLC, I'd probably recommend you instead purchase Ancient Relics. That is going to have by far a larger impact on your gameplay than anything else. And honestly, you will be missing out if you don't get your hands on this Archaeo technology. I'd like to finish off this by saying that I think the developers have done a fantastic job with patch 3.7. Both the paid DLC and the included new free features and rework to Ancient Relics are really, really good. My main criticism is that I don't believe primitive interactions are going to be something that everybody is looking for and enjoys. And if you are not one of those players, this new DLC is almost certainly not going to be for you. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see another video from this channel, the video on screen now has been specially selected for you.